Hello, and thank you again for joining us. Today, we at Mars International are proud to present the next video in our webinar series where we'll discuss the current state of global supply chain as of June 2021. In this video, we'll provide an overview and update on three key areas affecting supply chain. These areas include ocean and air freight, raw materials, and finally tariffs. Our presenter today will be our Director of Supply Chain Operations, Chris Cramen. Chris has extensive knowledge in strategic sourcing and supply chain management. He's been a valuable member of our team for several years now, bringing over 20 plus years of industry experience to Mars. Without further delay, I'll pass it over to Chris. Thank you again for joining us. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel for future video releases and check out our website at marsint.com.
Hi, my name is Chris Cramen and I work with Mars International. I'd like to take some time today to discuss the supply chain June 2021. Before I get started, let me take a few seconds and just introduce myself very quickly. I'm the Director of Supply Chain Operations here at Mars International. Graduated from Purdue with a Bachelor's in Industrial Technology and an MBA, so go Boilers. I've got about 20 years of work experience in supply chain and strategic sourcing. That includes expat assignments in Europe and Asia. And I've had experience sourcing everything from electronics to metals to mechanical parts, packaging, chemicals. I've bought just about everything there is out there to buy. During today's discussion, I like to focus on three main points in the supply chain. The first is ocean container and air freight. Secondly, raw material supply. And lastly, China and tariffs. First, let's talk about transportation and the ocean container and air freight. What we saw before the pandemic was the shutdown of all the factories, the shutdown of transportation and shipping. The reaction by the steamship lines was to idle their fleet to help prop up the prices and keep them from tanking, essentially. So they took capacity out of the marketplace. Then as people got used to the new norm, what they started doing was they're buying everything at home. The demand was still there. Then suddenly there was this huge glut of demand, and then everything just went crazy and everybody was shipping to get product back in. Everyone kind of figured out that people were still going to buy things. We were going to go into the holiday seasons when the majority of retailers are making their money. So this huge demand came. Then that led to a shortage of containers, which increased the price. If you look at the top graph on the left there and the table on the right, on the left is a Drewry index. It's an index of global freight rates for a 40-foot container, and you see where that rate has gone from approximately $1,400 to up over $5,000. So a huge jump in the cost of shipping a container. And then on the table on the right, you can see specific lanes and what's happened in the pricing there over the past few months. And you see again a huge increase in costs, primarily the ones that we're interested on the Asia to US ports. You just see gigantic, triple-digit increases. So between those two things, those also impacted the ports, and we saw that in the ports, all these containers coming in was overloading the ports. So if you look at the West Coast, Long Beach, or the East Coast, Elizabeth, New Jersey, even coming out of Hong Kong, we saw that there were delays in getting containers on boats, finding the availability on the boat, and then just being able to get it through the port. Because of this, what we've done at Mars with our lead times that we're quoting to customers, we add a week for each one of those ports if it's involved in a lane. So if you are bringing something in from Hong Kong and it's going to Elizabeth, we're going to add a week for Hong Kong and getting it out of the port, and we'll add an additional week on the Elizabeth side just for getting it in the port and getting it processed. And we get lots of stories from truckers that they used to go to the port. They would wait maybe an hour or two maximum. They would pick up their load and they're out the door. Now we have stories of truckers that are getting there at 5 in the morning to get in line, and they're not leaving the port until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So really getting tough on the truckers, which are already in a short supply in the US. So this is just something tying up more of their time, making it more difficult to get product out of the ports. Now, obviously it's a concern that there's a price increase. So we work the best we can to manage that, to optimize our freight, to try to negate that. The issue that really gets us is the volatility of it. That today we're doing one thing and next week it's something totally different, or 3 weeks later it's again different. Completely unforecastable and something that we can't control. Because of that, we are considering a freight surcharge or a shipping surcharge to add into bills. We're really working hard to offset that, but if it comes to that, we might have to look at surcharges. One of the interesting things that has come out of this over the past few years, we've gotten away from LCL. It's not as cost effective on a per cubic meter basis versus a 20 footer or a 40 footer. And we even had policies in place where we might delay a shipment by a week if the product that was going to be available the following week was enough to bump us up to a 20-foot container. And the thing with the 20-foot container is that it would get here quicker. You're only handling the product once versus LCL. It actually adds another week to delivery time because by the time it gets to the port, then it has to get out of there and go to another location to have the shipment broken down and individual pallets set off to the particular customer that has that product. So it would add more to the lead time. So when we were doing that and delaying a shipment out of China, it wasn't really adding any lead time because it would take an extra week for that to get there versus the 20-foot container that might leave the week after. Another aspect of this is obviously the air side of it. Everybody's falling behind and getting shipments because of lead time, so a lot of products getting shipped. The problem is one of the cost drivers for the air freight are the commercial airlines, and since there aren't flights going on a regular basis, taking people back and forth, and then filling in that underside of the aircraft with freight, there just wasn't enough capacity. Again, no capacity in the industry. We even saw some of the commercial carriers going in and taking out seats to convert their aircraft into freight only flights just to have the aircraft moving and earning some money. So we see that impact things in regards to just the costs and the surcharges. So if you look off the table on the right there on the bottom, it's a list of surcharges that FedEx is charging right now for their freight. And so you see something that might already cost $5 or $10 a pound to fly by air, and now they're talking about adding a 90-cent or a $1.60 surcharge on top of that due to the shortage. In normal times down below, your rule of thumb would be that ocean would cost you about a penny a pound to ship. Regular air freight, small package would cost you about $5 a pound. And then if you had to go expedited, then that would cost you $10 a pound. And currently FedEx is running where they only will accept the priority, international priority. So you're only getting that $10 per pound rate. Again, a rule of thumb, it depends on the density of your product and how big it is, how heavy it is. There's some calculations there that they do, but just as a rule of thumb, that's something good to keep in your mind, I think. Next, let's talk about raw materials. So we started a couple years ago where we had manufacturers such as ST Micro. All of a sudden, their lead times were blowing out. Demand was very strong, driven a lot by automotive. The number of cameras and controls that are on cars these days is growing exponentially. It created huge demand for the product, and that was tightening up capacity. So we saw major automotive suppliers like ST, their lead times really jump out. Well, then they finally caught up. They optimized their operations. They found some outsourcing opportunities, did some other things to play with their capacities. Lead times were just coming down, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hits. And we saw that, as we discussed earlier, the strong demand due to consumer spending. We saw the capacity hit because people weren't able to get into the factories. The factories weren't running, and as the demand was coming in, it dried up the supply chain, the pipeline very quickly. And then all of a sudden we're stuck with no capacity, no product available. You can see it if you go down to the Best Buy and you want to buy a refrigerator or any white good, maybe even cars. You see articles now where automotive plants are being idled because they can't get components. And that's huge because automotive plants are very expensive to run, and they have a lot of penalties for their vendors if you shut them down. So for that to happen shows you how difficult the situation is. There's also one-off events. I always say in supply chain, there's always something going on somewhere in the world. There was a fire in Japan at a silicon wafer fab where they were growing the ingots that would be sliced up into wafers to be used by the foundries. There's a drought in Taiwan. So Taiwan Semiconductors, one of the largest in the world, They're having trouble getting water, and it's a very water-intensive process. So you have things like that that are just adding to what's going on. And the net effect of this is that we're seeing components that are going out to 52 weeks plus on some of these specialty ICs. As we discussed, ST, one of the things with ST is that they're very focused on the automotive industry. So we expect to see automotive recover sooner than people making consumer retail electronics, even commercial controls, which is an industry that we're very heavy in as Mars. So we expect this portion of the market to be slower to recover. One of the differences we do see this time versus the last ST slowdown was last time they would just say, hey, yeah, we don't know when we're going to recover from this, so we don't know what's going to happen. This time they're at least optimistic, and they're saying that they think by the end of the year they'll be in a better position and then maybe be caught up Q1 of next year. So they're being optimistic. That's nice, and that's a change. Let's see if it happens, but that is an improvement over a very doom and gloom statements that we had from them in the last slowdown. We're also seeing Microchip. So if people can't get ST, what they do is they go to Microchip. ST is a great supplier. They have great products, good pricing. So when they have problems with their supply, everybody goes to Microchip. So now Microchip's seeing the crunch on their capacity. So they've come out with a program to develop their direct channel a little bit more, and you go online, Microchip Direct, and you buy your product there. You pay a little bit more money for it. They don't necessarily stock, but the big issue they're trying to sell is that they'll guarantee when they're going to deliver. So they're not going to say, hey, I'm going to deliver it to you next month. You're already talking 6 months out if you're going there. But they're saying in month 7 through month 18, however far out you put your orders, that they're guaranteeing that they will deliver on time and won't be late. The upside of that is great, you get your product. The downside being you can't cancel the order, you can't push it out. If capacity should open up down the road, you could pull it in, but you basically can't cancel the order, an NCNR order. It's easy for everybody to focus on the ICs and the big, expensive, complex parts that have custom programming and software, firmware, things like that. You can't forget about the other parts. Thin film caps have been a problem for quite a while now. We're even seeing on some relays, some specialty relays, that the lead times are going out quite far on those. So what do you do from a business perspective? First and foremost, I can't stress enough, get your orders in. Let's stick with ST as an example here. If you've got a part, an ST part, and it's got a 52-week lead time, and then you're going to throw in maybe a month to manufacture and do your quality control, everything else over in Asia, and then you're going to spend 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks on the water, you're at 15 months, and that's just in time you're living hand to mouth. If you want to give yourself a little extra time, you're looking at 18 months to get this product in. And that's how far out you should be looking to plan this right now. And I know that's kind of hard to do. A lot of businesses maybe aren't comfortable with making commitments that far out. There's obviously a lot of uncertainty, demand uncertainty, design uncertainty. Maybe you have some natural obsolescence that you like to do in redesigning product. So maybe an option is to look at something on just raw materials only. Maybe you're placing a raw material only order. Do not build until released. So then at least your risk is only on the raw material side of it. And then, let's be honest, most parts are jelly bean that can easily be repurposed for another customer. You can also make arrangements if you're buying that Microchip or ST part that you say, hey, look, I've got the order in for this. I might be doing a redesign and moving to a better chip. Will you allow me to change this order down the road? It's a discussion to have, and it's a point. It's not like you're going back to them and saying, hey, I just want to cancel this order. You're coming with a plan saying, look, I'm committed to using ST or Microchip or whoever the manufacturer is in my product. And if I find something better, I would like to swap out this demand for something else. That's a very strong argument to be able to make with them, and in general, they're going to work with you, I think. The other side of this is on the purchasing side, getting alternates approved, especially on those difficult to replace parts or long lead time parts. Making sure that you have alternates for ICs. I know that's really tough to do. Again, there's maybe some firmware considerations and design considerations, footprints, things like that to consider. It's not easy to do. Maybe there's some opportunity using something like a daughter board to help standardize the footprint and you're just changing a small PCB. And I think it's very important, get your engineering teams on board with this. This is a new norm. It's like there's a lot of volatility in what's going on. There's going to be a lot of requests for alternate components. Can you make those jelly bean parts just looking at the specs for the part and approving based on the specs aligning without having to do a lot of testing. Hopefully they're not critical parts in a UL application, whatever the case might be. But they've got to be on board and supporting this if you're going to keep things running in a smooth way or make the supply chain as flexible as possible. And that's the name of the game right now, is to do that. So it's a tough market right now. We've got to weather through it. We'll work with our customers to do what we can to help out. We know it's not easy, and we're spending a lot of time expediting. But we will do what we can to help keep you running. The last topic I'd like to touch on is China and the tariffs. So as of right now, we haven't seen any indication from the Biden administration that there'll be any change to the current tariff policy. So we're just assuming that it will continue at the 25% rate on the majority of products coming out of China. Beyond that, so even if the tariffs went away tomorrow, we would still have a lot of concerns over some of the social and geopolitical issues that are going on in China. Labor costs continue to go up at a very high rate. Just like in the US, the China government sets the standards and the rates for factory workers, and that's gone up from $250, $350 an hour just a few years ago to $650, $750 an hour now. And even with those increases, the factories are having problems finding people. Seems a cultural shift is happening where the workers that are out in the country don't want to come into the city and work at a manufacturing job doing assembly work all day. They have other pursuits they'd rather go after. We also saw an issue that when people went home for Chinese New Year last year, or because of the pandemic, they didn't come back. They weren't allowed to travel. There were all the lockdowns. They just didn't come back. So we saw the factories over the past 9 months just not have the labor. It's been very good since then. The startups after Chinese New Year had 95% labor retention, which is an extremely high rate. So the people that were there did come back, but they just didn't have enough people, and they're having trouble hiring people. So I think we're going to see some inflation going on there as they have to pay more to get people to do these jobs. You also have the political issues going on with Hong Kong and Taiwan, the South China Sea. It seems like every day in the papers there's a story about one of those areas and some friction that continues to grow and build there. We also see some government policies around quality. So China was looking at goods being returned and felt that China was becoming a dumping ground for bad electronics, and basically, here's our electronics, now you go take care of it and throw it away or recycle it, do whatever you're going to do. So they've put a lot of policies in place that make it very difficult and expensive and time consuming to bring products back in to have quality and rework done. VAT is getting involved, and time limits on how quickly you have to get the product, how long you have to return it, how long it can stay in the country to get fixed before it has to be exported. Otherwise, you don't get your VAT refunded because you do have to pay that up front. So it's becoming very difficult to work with China in regards to quality issues. So because of all that, Mars is going to continue to diversify our manufacturing footprint. Our forecast is that by the end of the year, we will be approaching about 75% of our purchases being done outside of China. And that's versus, say, 2-3 years ago when 95% of our purchases were in China. So that's a huge shift for us. We spent a lot of work the last couple of years looking for alternate sites to manufacture. And currently we have Thailand and the Philippines factory that are in production, and we're receiving production quantity ocean shipments from those locations. By Q3 of 2021, we expect to have India up and running. We're keeping our eye on that one. They're obviously having a resurgence with COVID, so we're going to watch that one very closely. In addition, we've made some investments in our business. So for our domestic production here in New Jersey, we've updated our SMT line, and we've also invested in a new selective wave solder line to make us a little more cost effective on those through-hole projects. So we're doing a lot to invest in that and can help customers out if you have defense or government requirements in regards to US source product. We're able to do that. So we think we're in a good position where we have factories in different regions, so we can help offset again, those one-off things that seem to happen or any problems that happen globally, that we've got alternate sources in different locations to help weather that and build some redundancy in. And then we also have the domestic production, so that we've got product here to do it. So we've got a good spread of the manufacturing footprint to accommodate anything that happens. And there's always something going on in the world globally somewhere. So we'll be prepared for that. So those are my main topics for today. Again, I hope it's informative. It's a very difficult time for manufacturing and for supply chain, and I think the key is building in as much redundancy and as much flexibility as you can into your designs and into your supply chains to help weather what's going on. This series is part of a YouTube series that we do here at Mars, so by all means please subscribe to our Mars YouTube channel, and you'll get this topic along with other topics on a monthly basis, just telling you more about what's going on within the world of Mars. If you have any comments or questions, by all means ask, drop an email to me, or do it on the YouTube channel. That is monitored. The chats are monitored by our sales team, and they can get the questions forwarded, and we're always here to help. So we're your supply chain experts. We're here to support your business. By all means, let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you. Thank you and have a great day.